The Asphalt Pact. The kingdom of the apartment. In the heart of the bustling city, where skyscrapers rose like giants of steel and glass, existed a small refuge of peace, a fourth-floor apartment, always bathed in the evening light, and perfumed with the scent of morning coffee and freshly baked dog biscuits. There lived three souls: Anna, a young artist with a calm smile, who filled the space with her paintings of dreamy landscapes; Loki, a husky with icy eyes, and an indomitable spirit, whose heart beat to the rhythm of ancient Norse chants of snow and freedom; and Nyx, a black cat whose feline elegance was surpassed only by his deep skepticism toward anything beyond his control. Loki daydreamed, lying on the rug. His blue eyes followed the flight of the doves outside of endless running, with the wind whipping his face, of secrets to be discovered. Beyond the walls of his home, his world was one of pure emotion, often colliding with the furniture in his bursts of energy. Nyx, for his part, considered the apartment the pinnacle of civilization. Everything had its place, its order, its schedule. From his throne on the highest shelf, he watched the world with disdain, convinced that nothing good, only chaos and danger, could come from out there. They tolerated each other, like two kingdoms, separated by an invisible and unbreakable border. The crack in the world. But adventure often isn't sought. It escapes through a half-open door. One random Tuesday, the doorbell rang. It was a delivery man with a huge canvas for Anna. Distracted by the excitement of her new project, Anna held the door open for a few seconds too long. It was all Loki needed. A new smell of hot metal and fresh paint called him from the hallway. Curiosity overcoming caution, he slipped to freedom. Nyx, from her vantage point, watched the scene in horror. The barbarian had breached the perimeter. For a moment, she calculated her options: stay in the safety of the kingdom, or follow that walking disaster who, without a doubt, would get into trouble. With a sigh of feline resignation, she slipped like a shadow through the doorway. Just before Anna closed it, unaware of the escape, the familiar world suddenly vanished. Loki found himself in the echoing hallway of the building. The air smelled of the unknown, of other dogs, of other people's cleanliness, of 1,000 other stories. Before fear could take hold of him, a dark silhouette slipped beside him, not out of loyalty, not yet, but out of a prudent certainty that stubborn dog would be his downfall, or perhaps his only hope. The ocean of asphalt. The roar of traffic was a monster that howled incessantly. The afternoon shadows lengthened like menacing claws, and every person who passed was an indifferent giant. Loki, for the first time, felt small, a speck of dust in a universe of concrete. Nyx, for the first time, felt control slip through her paws like fine sand. They looked at each other. In the husky's blue eyes, there was confusion and a flash of panic. In the cat's emerald eyes, a frantic calculator searching for a solution. And in that exchange of glances, a silent pact was born. They weren't friends, not yet. They were allies. Two shipwrecked men on an ocean of asphalt. Thus began their odyssey. Nyx, with the agility of a shadow and the cunning of one always observing, became their eyes and ears. From atop a mailbox, she scanned the road, gauging the flow of cars with the precision of a tactical general. When she gave the signal, a short, authoritative meow. Loki, with his strength and innocent courage, became their shield, clearing a path through the crowd with his furry bulk. It was he who stood in the way, with his hackles raised, and a trembling growl coming from deep within his chest. Before a snarling bulldog dared to approach, his small companion with clear intentions. It was Nyx who, from behind, transformed into a spectral fury, arching her back and hissing with a ferocity that seemed to double her size, chasing away the threat with sheer attitude. The rain surprised them next. Turning the streets into cold and treacherous rivers, they ran and took shelter, soaked and shivering, under a solitary bench, in a deserted park. Loki's trembling was uncontrollable, and then, Nyx, breaking all the protocols of her species and her character, curled up against his side, pressing her small black body against the dog's soaked fur. A deep, rumbling purr, a small engine of warmth and calm, began to vibrate between them, creating a small aura of peace amidst the chaos. It wasn't just to calm Loki, it was to ward off his own terror. On that cold night, under the dim light of a street lamp, they found warmth in each other. The homecoming song. But the thrill of the adventure soon lost its luster, replaced by the cold and a piercing nostalgia. The strangeness of the world became oppressive. Loki longed for his soft bed and the sound of Anna's breathing. Nyx longed for the quiet of her bookshelf and the tidy view from the window. The same smell that had drawn them on the adventure, the sweet aroma of Anna's cookies, became a painful lure in their hearts. They were lost. Home was a distant and painful memory. It was then that a sound, like a silver thread, cut through the haze of their desolation, faint at first, then growing clearer and more desperate. It was Anna's whistle, a sound that represented walks, play, and love. Loki raised his head, and a long, melodious howl filled with endless longing emerged from his throat in response, a call to return home, a song of the city wolves. Nyx, forgetting all dignity and skepticism, meowed with all her might, a high-pitched, urgent sound interlacing with the howl. They ran like hell, dodging puddles and obstacles, guided by that compass of sound that led them home. As they turned the final corner, they saw her, Anna, her face pale with worry, her eyes shining with tears that finally overflowed. The reunion was a torrent of pure emotion. Loki jumped, licking her tears with gushing relief, wagging his tail like a whirlwind of joy. Nyx tangled herself around his legs, rubbing her head against his jeans, purring with an intensity she'd never shown before, a vibration that spoke of love and relief. Anna knelt on the wet ground and hugged them both with all her strength, burying her face in their wet fur, whispering between sobs words of relief, of love, and promises to never let them go again. There were no scoldings, only the immense, overwhelming relief of having recovered the pieces of her heart. The invisible border. That night, back in the warmth of the apartment, clean, dry, and with their stomachs full of those cookies they had both craved, something had changed forever. The invisible border had vanished, melted by the rain and the shared experience. They were no longer two separate realms. When Anna turned off the light, she didn't see Loki alone in his bed and Nyx on her bookshelf. She saw the two of them together. Nyx, curled like a black amulet against Loki's warm back, who had a large, protective paw around the small feline, like a guardian of his dreams. They breathed in unison, in perfect peace, a single organism of purrs and contented sighs. The city was still out there, huge and noisy, but it was no longer a monster. It was just a landscape, a stage they had managed to cross together, because they had discovered, on the cold ground of a sidewalk, that true home is not four walls, but the unshakable certainty that, no matter the adventure or the danger, you will not be alone, and that sometimes, the most unlikely companion, an impulsive dreamer, and a cautious pragmatist, can become the most faithful friend, forging an indestructible bond not in comfort, but beneath the vast, starry city night. The footprint of winter. The first cold of winter covered the city in a damp, gray blanket, but inside the apartment, the warmth was more than physical. The friendship between Loki and Nyx blossomed in small gestures. Nyx meticulously cleaned Loki's ear after breakfast, and Loki let Nyx drink first from the water fountain, an act of canine chivalry that Anna found adorable. One afternoon, while Anna was cleaning out the closet, she found an old box. From it, she took out a small Christmas sweater for a dog and a delicate tadpole-shaped sweater for a cat, gifts from an eccentric aunt. The previous year, with a mischievous smile, she approached her companions. The struggle to dress them was epic. Loki froze, offended by the feel of the wool. Nyx transformed into a swirl of claws and silent protests. But Anna, with infinite patience and the incentive of some treats, achieved her goal. That night, Loki, wearing a Santa Claus sweater, and Nyx, wearing a green naughty elf sweater, looked at each other. There was a moment of tension, until Loki let out a playful growl and gently nudged Nyx with his snout. Nyx responded by giving him a clawless paw on his nose. Anna photographed them laughing, her two Grinches, stealing Christmas from each other. The Secret Garden. With spring, the trips to the park arrived. They were no longer panicked excursions, but joint expeditions. Anna, more cautious, always used a double leash. Loki pulled vigorously toward the open spaces, while Nyx, ensconced in his carrier backpack with a transparent bubble, supervised the route. Like a pharaoh in his bunk, one day, Loki stopped dead in front of a thick hedge. Sniffing intensely, he let out a small, excited bark. Nyx, intrigued, meowed from her bubble, gesturing for Anna to come closer. Pushing open a branch, Anna discovered a small hidden clearing, a secret garden between the buildings, filled with wild bushes, butterflies and the quiet buzzing of bees. It was the perfect place. Anna sat on a stone bench, half hidden, and let Nyx out. For the first time, the three of them enjoyed the outdoors without fear. Loki scampered through the grass, chasing invisible scents, while Nyx, with elegant caution, explored every corner, feeling the spring sun on her black back. It was their little sanctuary, a piece of nature claimed for them. The night visitor. Summer arrived with sticky heat. One night, a noise in the kitchen woke Anna. She went downstairs quietly and found Loki and Nyx standing in front of the balcony door, motionless and alert. They weren't scared, but curious. Outside, an unexpected visitor, a baby opossum, lost and scared, stared with round black eyes from the pot of basil. Anna held her breath, waiting for chaos, but it didn't happen. Loki approached slowly, tail lowered, and moving gently. Sniffing the air, the opossum curled into a ball. Nyx, instead of attacking, sat at a safe distance, observing with her analytical gaze, like a scientist, facing a peculiar phenomenon. Loki let out a soft, almost pitying moan. Anna carefully placed some water and fruit on a plate, and slid it onto the balcony. For 3 nights, the opossum returned, and for 3 nights, Loki and Nyx stood silent guard, protectors of a creature more vulnerable than themselves. When it stopped appearing, Loki looked out the window longingly, and Nyx, in an unusual gesture, rubbed against his paw, as if consoling him. The perfect storm. Autumn returned. With one of the worst storms in years, the power went out, plunging the apartment into an eerie gloom. Thunder rumbled like bombs, and lightning lit up the room with ghostly flashes. Loki, terrified by the thunder, tried to hide under the table, gasping and trembling. Nyx, normally imperturbable, huddled in the darkest corner of the sofa, his pupils wide as saucers, paralyzed with fear. Anna tried to calm one, and then the other, but it was a losing battle. Until she remembered, She lit several candles, creating a circle of soft, warm light. Then, she sat on the floor between the two and called them. Loki came first, burying his head in her lap. Nyx hesitated, but another crash of thunder decided. She approached slowly and curled up against Anna's side. Right next to Loki, Anna stroked them both, speaking in a soothing voice. Little by little, Loki's panting calmed. Nyx's purr, at first tremulous, became steady and deep. They no longer feared the storm, because they had created their own refuge. A refuge for three. The apartment, in the candlelight, was more welcoming than ever. It wasn't the absence of fear that united them, but the choice to face it together. The city of two. The city was still out there, always moving, always changing. But for Loki and Nyx, it was no longer a maze of dangers. It was a map of shared memories. The mailbox from which Nyx directed traffic, the bench under which they sheltered from the rain, the hedge that hid their secret garden, every walk, every nap in the sun on the balcony, every quiet night in the apartment, was a new chapter in their story. They were no longer the dog who dreamed of escaping, and the cat who dreamed of being locked away. They were the guardians of the apartment, the explorers of the park, Anna's companions. And so, in the heart of the bustling city, a husky with icy eyes and a black cat with a skeptical gaze found something more precious than any adventure. A home made not of bricks, but of trust. A home they carried with them everywhere, in the silent certainty that, whatever the city threw at them, they would face it together. The end.